The earliest conversations were really very quick. There wasn't like a lot of debate about it. I'd heard the possibility and I said, obviously I'd love to, it would be a privilege. Um, and I sort of got updated a bit on where the process was, what the time frame was, who I'd be working with, and for all the sort of obstacles that were sort of presented, it still seemed like a once in a lifetime kind of opportunity. I had grown up watching Star Trek late at night. There was a channel where I grew up. I grew up on the East Coast, and they would play it at like 11 o'clock. And I think for a lot of guys my age, people my age, it was kind of like the first introduction into like real sci-fi. I mean, there was Star Wars, there were these other things, but Star Trek was this other thing that had like this whole other kind of thing behind it that I didn't quite appreciate when I was little. So I was always fascinated with it, but I have to be honest that I probably didn't fully understand it till I was older, which I think is what makes it kind of a unique property in itself. I think when we were writing it and thinking about it, we always had in mind like what would the fans think of this particular moment? How would it be received by that like hardcore base? But we also just thought about what could be just a good story for these characters in the place of their time. But we really did always go back and check, double check, make sure that the things we were doing were inside the canon, which is always really important. Sort of the difficulty of it is that there's so much material after 50 years with all the shows, with all the books and all the things that are considered canon. You know, we weren't afraid of necessarily duplicating something that had come before, but we just wanted to make sure that we were within the bounds of the established universe. We used a lot of names and references, and we put some little things in there that were always going back to the original series. Some even moments from some of the earlier movies, but we consciously wanted to put some lines in there that, it's funny, when you put them in now, they almost feel kind of antiquated or sort of, out of context with things. But, we always kind of looked at them as, well, no, they're true to the character because we know they've said it before, even if it was in the 60s. So there's a great line from Bones, who Bones always ended up having the great lines we could call back to, where he says, in a pig's eye, which is kind of like a big moment in one of the original episodes. So there are fans who hopefully will get that. Simon brings such a good energy to it because there's always an element of fun that we're trying to get to. There's always an element of trying to make sure we're being true to Star Trek. And it just was a really kind of, it really is, I mean, it was difficult and we were challenged and we had some long days and nights, but it was overall a really fun thing to do with Simon because, again, we always just try to make it fun for ourselves and hopefully that would make it fun in the movie. So there were some really great moments I think we got to just by trying to keep that spirit alive constantly. I think the reason why it resonates so much and it's been around for so long is because ultimately what Roddenberry presents is this hopeful world, this hopeful universe. And ultimately what it says, I think, for people, at least why I respond to it so much, is that, like, we are the answer. Like, we are the thing that will evolve and will bring about a better way of living. And there's not many franchises, not many things in pop culture that actually speak to that kind of like, sense of hopefulness and progress, and is not dystopian, and I think that's one of the reasons why. And I think another reason why is that just in the way they've always constructed the stories, they always feel relevant to our world at the time, and hopefully Star Trek Beyond can satisfy that as well. But I think it's those elements, that sort of relevance to our own world, this big view of what ultimately we and the world and the universe can be, they're just things I think that people always go back to and think, yeah, like that's worthwhile. You know, that's an idea that is always ripe and always good to strive towards.